Hey CLC parents, it's time for another Monday Minute. So I just want to remind you, if you have not yet, to subscribe to this YouTube channel. That will just help you get notifications, know when videos are going out. We always post on Mondays, like I've said before. Um, if you have friends that you think would like some of this parenting advice, obviously we're going to lace it with biblical values and principles, but if you have friends that you think would enjoy some of this content, make sure that you pass this along to them as well to subscribe. We're trying to build our channel because the more our channel gets built, then it reads those analytics and it pushes it out to other people on YouTube, which is great. So we have been talking all about love languages, and I would encourage you, if you have not watched these in sequence, to go back to the beginning, at least the beginning of January, and watch them in order, because it really is going to make a lot more sense if you do that versus just watching small snippets and pieces of them. So we talked about words of affirmation and how you reach the kiddo that that's their love language. I told you then that I have, one kiddo that words of affirmation is theirs. We talked about quality time last week. I have another kiddo that quality time is definitely his. Today we're going to talk about physical touch. Now, this really isn't any of my kids' number ones, but it's my spouse's number one, and it's my number 5. Hence where I said at the beginning of our marriage, it was like there was lots of frustration and we were kind of butting heads because what was his number 1 love language was literally my number 5 love language. So he's trying to show me love based off of his number 1, and I'm trying to show him love based off of my number 1, which led to lots of fun things in the first year of marriage. But then we got this concept, and it has really transformed us and our marriage, but also helped us with parenting so much. So today we're going to talk about physical touch. That's the 3rd one. 4th one is acts of service, which that one is a big one for me. And then receiving gifts is number 5, and that is probably my secondary. So those ones I feel like come very easy for me. Now notice, again, my kids were words of affirmation, quality time, and then I do have one that theirs is receiving gifts. So I have one that's like me, 2 that their number 1 is not in my wheelhouse per se, and I've had to work a little harder at it. But if physical touch is their number 1 love language, showing them affection through hugs, kisses, high fives, cuddles, pats on the back, group hugs, snuggling on the couch. If you have a girl, spa night, like all of those things would qualify as physical touch. And an act of physical touch can foster a sense of security in a child and belonging in your relationship with them. And what's interesting is, when our kids first came to us through foster care, physical touch was a big one for them. They always wanted to be held or be on our lap or things like that. Why? Because they wanted that sense of security and belonging. As they've gotten older, and they've now been with us like almost 8.5 years, almost 9, their love languages their dominant natural ones have taken over. But at the beginning, physical touch, it was all about that because they needed to feel security, they needed to feel bonded to someone. And so, like I said, that was a huge thing to help foster those initial relationships with them, because we didn't have them since they were a baby. So we had to foster those things as they were older. When you have a younger child, when you have a baby, this is a need that has to be fulfilled, right? They need held, they need rocked, they need changed, they need bathed, they need dressed. Like, you have to do those things when they're infants. In our case, we didn't have them as infants. So that bond of physical touch and security was not naturally there with us because they weren't with us. And so we had to create that with them as they were a little older. Now, like I said, as we've had them for a while and they now feel secure and bonded, their natural love language, what I feel like was probably would have always been there had there not been neglect and abuse and things like that at the beginning. And most of you know, we fostered our kids and then adopted them. So there was a lot of things prior to us that we had to kind of work on working through. But as they've gotten older, their natural love languages that they process have kind of risen to the top. But when they're younger, you have to do those things for them. So when they're older, as they grow and get older, you have to make more of an effort, because as a baby and as a toddler, you have to fulfill those needs. When they're an elementary student or a teenager, you don't have to really fulfill those needs. And honestly, as a teenager, they're going to tell you that they don't want anything to do with you, and they don't want those needs met, but they actually do. They as teenagers, they say a lot of things that they don't mean. And I'm sure you can think back to a lot of things you said to your parents that you didn't really mean. And now that you're older, you get it. The light bulb goes off. So, you know, for me, like I said, this is not my natural way of showing love. I'm the type of person that I don't need a hug. I don't need like cuddled or snuggled. In fact, sometimes I feel like it's a little suffocating, to be honest with you. And so this is one for me that, like, you know, for my spouse's sake and for our kids' sake at the very beginning, I had to really work through, like, okay, this is important to them. So I've got to work through my thing with it, where I don't really necessarily need that per se. So especially if this is your child's number one love language, times that they are going to need physical touch the most is if they're sick, if they're not feeling well. And I feel like all kids kind of need this a little bit, but if you have a kid that this is their number one love language, they're really going to need it. So anytime that they're sick, anytime that they're in physical pain, anytime that they're in emotional pain, anytime that they're maybe really fatigued because they're tired, those are all times that they're going to crave physical touch if that's their number one love language. It's interesting with my kids, they still, at those points where every kid kind of craves that a little bit, my kids do revert back somewhat where they want that physical touch in that moment. Even my teenager that is too cool for school and acts like he wants nothing to do with me outside of our house, if he's had a hard day, he wants mom. And honestly, I'll give you a prime example. Even though this isn't his number one, just the importance of this when they are in pain, maybe emotionally or physically. So he had a basketball game last night, didn't really go our way. He's an aggressive player. He fouled out before the end of the game. He was at 5, and so his team really needed him, but he couldn't be in. And so he was pretty upset when we got home. He didn't want to talk, acted like he wanted nothing to do with anyone. And so I gave him his space, let him go down to his room. But every night, I've talked about this before, one of us pray over our kids, do confessions over our kids. So I went down, to do my normal deal with him. And he, at first, covered his head with his blankets and acted like he didn't care. But then, as I started, and I didn't even talk about the game, didn't even talk about, what happened at that point, just started doing our normal nightly prayer and confessions. And he was like, Mom, can I have a hug? Like, my teenage son asking for that. Because in that moment, emotionally, like, he was tore up. He was sad that he lost. He was sad that he let his team down because he felt like, man, if I wouldn't have got fouled out, I could have helped them. So in those times, like I said, every kid craves that. But if this is your kid's number one love language, they're going to crave it even more. And a really important thing for every kid, but especially, like I said, if this is their number one, after you discipline them, you need to give them a hug, and you need to help them to realize, listen, you got disciplined as a consequence for the actions that you did. However, I still love you unconditionally no matter what. That's going to be really important to give them that hug and that comfort after you discipline them, because if you discipline them and then walk away and you never go back to it, you always want to close the door on discipline. You always want to end things on a positive note, even if maybe it's not so positive at the moment. You want to try to end it as positively as you possibly can. And we're going to do a whole month on discipline, but if physical touch is your child's number one love language, you want to make sure that you always end discipline on a hug and them knowing that they are loved unconditionally no matter what just transpired and took place. So hopefully that helps you if that's your child's number one love language. As always, we hope and are praying that you're having a fantastic week, and we hope you keep tuning in, sharing this with friends. And if you have certain topics or ideas that you're like, man, it'd be really impactful or beneficial if you covered this, please feel free to leave a comment. Let me know at church, email me, let me know, because I want to be covering things that are really going to help you guys in your parenting journey with your kids. So as always, we count it such a joy to be able to minister to you and your family, and we look forward to seeing you on the next Monday Minute.